Today, we're gonna go from this to this. It's cinematic lighting for any budget. Let's go. Today, we're talking about cinematic lighting. Now, Michelle, what do you think of when you think of cinematic lighting?
I think of color contrast, contrast ratio, so the differences between the highlights and the shadows, and I think of depth and background separation.
So today we're going to show you how to achieve a similar look using both higher end LEDs and also more budget-friendly LEDs. So for this first setup, how did you go about thinking about the lighting?
So we had a practical lamp in our background, and we wanted to kind of emulate that with a 120D2 with a light dome 2.
So how did you create that depth with lighting?
We had a 300D2 with the Fresnel attachment with a half CTB and an opal, just kind of edging him and separating him from the background. So with the Christmas lights, the shallow depth of field, and also cutting our key light off from the background, we were able to create more depth.
So for the reverse shot of our female actress, you used similar techniques, but you flipped the lights around. So your rim light was warm and your key light was cool. Why did you do that?
So we wanted to create a little bit more of a difference between our male and our female subjects. So we decided to key her with a 120D2 with a mini dome diffusion and a control grid. In order to soften her key, we put some 250 diffusion in front of that. We used a 300D2 with a light dome. We decided to use a 300D with the spotlight attachment, and we used the cutters to create a slash across the background in the wall. To make it more natural, we decided to use a 672 skipping off the floor and filling up the background a little bit.
So let's take a look at this full scene lit by higher end LED lights. So Michelle, if you want to achieve that similar kind of look, but on a lower budget, what would you change?
So with a lower budget, we decided to replace our key light, which was a 120D2, with a 672 instead. We decided to put half CTO on top of that in order to warm up the source, and we shot it through 2 layers of 250 diffusion in order to create that same softness.
You also replaced the hair light with another panel, correct?
Yes. So we decided to replace our hair light with the F7. We set that to a color temperature of 5600 to match our moonlight, and in order to make it even cooler, we added a half CTB in front of that. We decided to create a little black rat snoot to kind of narrow the beam.
So for the reverse shot, which lights did you replace?
We replaced our key light with a 672 with full CTB on it, and we shot it again through 2 layers of 250 diffusion.
And then for your rim light, what did you do?
So we decided to use a 672 with full CTO on it, and we shot it through a silk, and we flagged it off with a 4x floppy to make sure it didn't hit the background at all. Unfortunately, with panels, they're not quite as punchy as a 300D with the spotlight attachment, but we were able to recreate as best as we could with a cardboard cutout.
All right, let's take a look at this whole scene using our budget-friendly LEDs. All right, Michelle, so what are 3 takeaways if we want to make cinematic lighting?
So when I think about cinematic lighting, I think about contrast ratio, so having negative fill to counteract the bright parts of your image. I think about color contrast. In this case, we contrasted our warm lighting versus cooler lighting, and background separation and depth. So in this case, we cut off lighting from the background and we added some little sparks of light like our practical and the Christmas lights.